everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Cyber Beats, the podcast series from CISA. I'm Aparna Gajanan, and I head brand and content here at CISA. Now, on this series, I'll be talking shop with some of our brightest minds, from compliance and threat detection to data protection, and almost everything in between. The idea is fairly simple. It's to bring to you the best of our in house expertise, the kind of observations and insights we would typically share in a meeting room or over a cup of coffee. So, largely, the podcast will help you to stay tuned in to what's shaping cybersecurity today. And to kick off our inaugural episode, I couldn't think of a better guest than Sachin Sawant, CISA's head of compliance and MXDR business units. So today we're going to pick his brain on one of his sweet spots, which is compliance. We'd be talking about cybersecurity compliance, its future, the chaos, the convergence, and control. So, Sachin, welcome to the inaugural episode of the podcast. Thank you very much for having this discussion with me. And before we start to talk shop, I actually want our listeners to get a sense of the person behind the role. You've had a front row seat to some of the most complex cybersecurity challenges and compliance related engagements, right? But what I want to understand is, how did it all start for you? And what's your journey been like for the last 25 years in this industry? So why don't you walk us through, what really pulled you into this entire world of cybersecurity in the first place?
Yeah, thank you, Aparna. So, as you mentioned, I've been in this industry for over 25 years now. I started my career as a web designer, then moved into AS400 development, and eventually landed into cybersecurity. So, I played multiple roles in cybersecurity at leadership level. So, for the past 3 years, I've been with CISA, leading compliance and testing solutions. And recently, I've also taken on the responsibility of one more business unit. So it is an exciting journey so far and ahead as well.
Great, Sachin. So, well, you've really succinctly kind of, captured 25 years of experience. So, thank you. And now let's move on to talking shop, like I said. Let's start with the big picture. Compliance used to be dreaded checkbox activity, right? And it has since moved to something far more strategic. Let's say it's now considered closely tied to cyber risk, brand reputation, and even business continuity. Now, you've witnessed this shift firsthand with the years of experience that you've had in the industry. So, what, in your view, has triggered this transformation, and how do you think organizations are coping with it today?
So, from my point of view, three key forces triggered this shift. And this transformation has not happened overnight. Actually, it has taken some very real and very visible pressures to make this shift happen. And the obvious one is, of course, the rise in cyber threats like ransomware, supply chain attacks, and sophisticated APTs made it very, very clear that compliance failures are not theoretical risks. They hit operations and, most importantly, revenue directly. Now, there are stakeholder expectations also. Boards and investors are now looking at cyber posture as integral to enterprise value. It's not just regulators pushing this anymore. And then the final one is something we can relate to as consumers. So,
Mm.
brand and trust. Customers today care deeply about how their data is protected. A single breach can erode years of brand equity. It's also interesting to see how are organizations coping with this change. I mean, the smart ones are integrating compliance into enterprise risk framework. This is making CISOs and compliance heads as part of strategic decision making. They're also investing in continuous controls monitoring, not just annual audits. So compliance stays alive and dynamic.
So, Sachin, you mentioned how smarter organizations are integrating compliance into enterprise risk frameworks and sort of tailoring it to their reality, right? Now, we're also seeing regulators moving in that direction. So, rolling out sector specific playbooks for healthcare, for banking, for e commerce, and now even for fintech. So, what's really driving this segmentation? And do you think this segmentation is actually giving organizations more clarity, or is it just adding another layer of chaos, maybe?
Actually, it's a bit of both. Sector specific mandates like HIPAA for healthcare, then RBI guidelines for banking in India, and then PCI for payments do provide a lot of tailored clarity. After all, yeah, hospitals' risks are different from a fintech startup's risk. But here is a catch. For organizations that straddle multiple sectors, it's not so straightforward. Let's take an e-commerce player example. Yeah, so that also offers payment services and sells healthcare products. Suddenly, you are juggling multiple compliance regimes, each moving at its own pace, with little harmonization between them. That's where you start seeing control fatigue and compliance fragmentation. So, yes, the sectoral focus makes sense from a risk perspective, but it also means companies need far stronger internal compliance orchestration to keep it all aligned and under control.
So, if managing multiple sector mandates wasn't enough, I think now what we are starting to see is a wave of globally recognized security standards. Let's say from NIST, you have high trust, and then you have the ever popular ISO as well, right? All of these are gaining traction as a risk framework, and each of these has their own quirks, has their own nuances, so to speak. So, for organizations operating across multiple regions, how do you even begin to build a unified, sustainable security strategy when the environment itself is so fragmented?
Yeah, Parna. This is honestly one of the toughest challenges today because each regulation comes with its own nuances, especially when you see each from sectoral lens. Traditionally, many of these started from the respective sectoral regulations, and slowly they gained popularity and acceptance across sectors. So, what's working for global organization is building security compliance programs around foundational principles, and these are like let's say data minimization, purpose limitation, and access management. And on top of that, we have to layer local obligations. They're also investing in centralized data mapping and consent orchestration tools. So these things can adapt to regional rules. In simple terms, the move is from a policy driven approach to a data driven approach. So you need to know where your data is, what it's doing, and then align compliance obligations around it.
Right. So, Sachin, we've spoken about how compliance has shifted from a checkbox to a strategic lever. We've talked about sector specific rules. And then you just spoke about global standards that are layered on top of all of that, right? Now, when all of these collide in the real world, let's say inside a boardroom or even during an actual audit, uh, I, I'm just trying to understand, what is the mood like? Is it just a case of control overload? Or do you think it's pointing to something deeper about compliance and how actually these engagements get governed?
Yeah, actually, Aparna, it's both. I've been in boardrooms where the compliance dashboards looks like a Christmas tree. So green for PCI, then amber for ISO, and red for DPDP. So people are really tired of audits. Yeah, but more than that, they are frustrated by the disconnect between compliance activities and then actual risk reduction. I see more organizations now asking few questions. So first could be are we just checking boxes or truly mitigating risks? Then are our investments in compliance tools overlapping or even conflicting? And can we consolidate assessments to reduce the burden on operations? That is more important question, yeah. And then this is triggering the rethink of governance itself. So moving from compliance as an IT driven activity to a business resilience function tied to strategy and brand trust is very important now.
Mm.
So I think one challenge that doesn't get talked about enough is internal misalignment. So, legal owns compliance, IT owns controls, then CISO owns security, and then the risk sits somewhere else.
Mm.
Now, suddenly, you've got four different versions of reality. And what happens? You end up with a fragmented view of what is actually happening on the ground. So, this internal misalignment is one of the most underrated challenge in achieving meaningful compliance. So the key to breaking these silos is to shift from a document driven compliance mindset to a risk informed operational approach. This means embedding compliance into your day to day processes, not treating it as an annual audit event. So, actually, if you think it starts with leadership at top,
Mm.
and then creating a central governance structure that brings all these functions to the same table. And from tools perspective, platforms that support centralized control management, then shared evidence repositories, and then cross functional dashboards help everyone speak the same language. A unified audit approach allows multiple standards like ISO, SOC, then PCI, then GDPR requirements to be mapped to the same control set. So, whether it's legal, risk, or IT, everyone sees how their work contributes to the bigger picture. So ultimately, integrated compliance is not about merging roles. It is
Mm.
about creating visibility, then accountability, and shared objectives across functions.
Right. So, what you've just described is a misalignment between teams that can make compliance feel like four different versions of reality, like you said, right? And how a unified approach can actually change that. So, can you share a real world moment from a client engagement where, the complexity nearly broke the system? Or an experience where the right audit strategy actually helped turn things around?
Yeah, so Aparna, so it will be very interesting to see how this pans out in real life. Yeah. So I remember an engagement with a large payments processor. So that operated across multiple regions. So I think they were in Asia Pacific, then the Middle East, and then North America as well. So they were undergoing multiple audits at the same time. So if I recollect properly, then there was PCI DSS, then SOC 2, and a few local banking compliance audits. Yeah. Now, the overlapping evidence requirements and contradictory interpretations almost brought their internal teams to a standstill. But what we did, we implemented a unified audit strategy. So we mapped controls across frameworks, created a master compliance register, and then we ran a single evidence collection cycle. This reduced their audit workload by almost 40%. Now, what could have spiraled into chaos actually became an opportunity to streamline their governance. That experience reinforced for me something I've seen time and again, that compliance is not about more controls, it is all about smarter alignment.
Now, the example you just spoke about, really shows the power of smarter alignment, which sort of makes me wonder, on the regulatory side, do you think we'll ever see that kind of alignment at a global level? I mean, there's a lot of talk of harmonizing cybersecurity regulations that's happening. But do you think it's a realistic outcome anytime soon? Or would you say that regulatory divergence is just the new normal that businesses will need to navigate? And I just like to add another thing to that. Do you think regulators are moving fast enough to give businesses unified guidance, or do you think they're still stuck in fragmented frameworks?
Yeah. So I think this regulatory divergence is here to stay. Yeah, at least for some more time. Yeah. So each country's approach is driven by its unique mix of national security priorities, and then they will have their economic strategy as well. And on top of that, there are different cultural views on privacy. Now, let me break that down into two parts. So, first is your global harmonization question. So, for example, let us say India's DPDP Act. So, it has explicit data localization triggers that are tied to strategic interest, while the Europe's GDPR mainly focuses on individual rights and cross-border adequacy. At the same time, US is still largely sectoral and state-led. Now, having said that, I do see emerging convergence on core principles like accountability, then data minimization, then breach notification, and demonstrable risk management as well. Now, many multinationals are building compliance programs around all these pillars, then overlaying their local obligations. So I feel in practice, global harmonization at the regulation level may be unlikely,
Mm.
but operational harmonization through smart internal frameworks is absolutely possible. So that's where the industry is heading. So second part of the question is are regulators moving fast enough?
Fast enough, yeah.
So I would say it's a mixed picture. So some regulators like the Monetary Authority of Singapore, or for that matter, you can take India's RBI in certain areas. So they're trying to provide more consolidated and sector-specific guidance. So that's tied to real risks. But globally, I feel we are still largely in a fragmented space. So cyber risks are constantly evolving, while regulations often take years to draft and enforce. And I mean, this lag always creates gaps. Yeah. So also many regimes still operate in silos, like privacy, payments, and then maybe operational resilience, and then there is always a limited crosstalk. So that's why I feel organizations are often forced to become their own integrators, building internal governance models that transcend regulatory silos. Now, until the regulators catch up with truly unified risk aligned models, it will remain on businesses just to tie it all together.
Okay. So, if we accept that full harmonization may not happen anytime soon, right? And businesses are sort of left to themselves to stitch these things together. Let's flip the scenario a little bit. Say you had 10 minutes in a room with the world's leading cybersecurity regulators. What would you tell them to either change or to simplify things that can make life easier for organizations on the ground trying to battle all these different compliances and regulations?
So, three things I feel top my wish list. So, promote interoperable standards. So, regulators could endorse common baseline frameworks like, let us say, ISO 27K,
Mm.
then SOC 2, or maybe PCI DSS. Yeah. So, these standards will act as presumptive evidence of good security. Now, that would let businesses align once and then comply many times. Then, second could be standardized reporting expectations. So, today, incident notification rules vary wildly from few hours under GDPR to immediate under certain financial regimes. So, I feel a consistent global playbook would reduce this confusion during these already stressful breach situations. And third is encourage risk-based compliance, and then it should not be checkbox driven. Yeah.
Mm.
So many audits still get bogged down in these trivial things. Yeah, while real threats lurk somewhere else. Yeah. So if regulators pushed more dynamic risk assessment tied to actual threat landscapes, then we would see compliance investments flowing in right direction.
Right. So, like you said, while we wait for regulatory alignment, some organizations are trying to build internal unified control frameworks that map across standards. So, in your experience, do you think this is a viable path forward? And if yes, where do you think most attempts actually stumble?
Yeah, Prana. So if I have to give a very, very straight answer, then answer is yes. Yeah. So I feel, so in my experience, yeah, so building an internal unified control framework is not only viable, but essential for mature organizations. Yeah. So the organizations which are aiming for sustainable and scalable compliance. Now, the path to achieve this dream is layered with both opportunity and operational reality. So, organizations that succeed typically, yeah, so start with a risk-based control, risk-based control library aligned with globally accepted frameworks. So this could be like ISO 27K, wherein we are talking about Annexure A for security controls. Then you must have seen AICPA's TSC, that is Trust Services Criteria. So that is for SOC 2. And we have NIST Cybersecurity Framework. And then there is something called as NIST SP 853 also. So that is mainly for your federal and critical infra environments. And you have GDPR articles and recitals also. And then this that is mainly for privacy compliance. But where most attempts stumble is in execution. And I would break this down into few key pitfalls. Yeah. So I feel superficial mapping without context could be one of the pitfalls. Yeah. So many organizations rely on high level mapping templates, assuming control A in ISO is equivalent to control B in SOC 2. But the intent and audit evidence required for each of these are often very, very different. So, without understanding control objectives and assurance level, this mapping fails miserably. Then, second could be the lack of stakeholder alignment. So, unified audits require buy-in across multiple departments. So you need to have buy-in from security team, then privacy, then legal, then you will have DevOps, and then you might have different compliance teams on top of security and privacy. So if the effort remains siloed within one team, it rarely succeeds. Then third could be tooling limitations. So many rely on static spreadsheets or legacy GRC tools. So that can't scale to manage complex mappings or control testing workflows. A successful unified framework demands automation, real-time evidence tracking, and then reusability of evidence. Then fourth could be no common risk language. So you can't unify audits if you haven't unified how risk is accessed and communicated. So without a shared risk taxonomy, such as the one in ISO 27005, or the FAIR framework, yeah, wherein so these frameworks are actually, I would say that bit fragmented. Yeah. So yes, yeah. So the unified audit is achievable, but it's not a copy paste exercise. It requires an understanding that harmonization is more than compliance, and it is a business enabler.
Yeah, but I think the key question still is why unify at all? I mean, beyond efficiency or effort reduction, what's the strategic value of unified audit? I mean, are we talking about reduced risk, maybe faster response, better decision making, um, or is it something else? I mean, why unify at all at the end of the day?
Yeah, so very very good question, Aparna. So while efficiency and effort reduction are often the initial motivations, but the strategic value of unified audit goes far beyond that. So actually, it helps organization reduce risk exposure by ensuring that uh, all these controls, yeah, so these are consistently implemented and monitored across multiple standards. So if you do that, it will leave us with fewer blind spots. Yeah, so it also enables a faster response to incidents or changes, yeah, in the regulatory requirements. So as organizations have centralized and real-time view of their compliance posture, this is very important piece. Yeah. So this directly supports better decision making, allowing a leadership team to prioritize investment and remediation efforts based on actual risk data rather than fragmented reports. Now, unified audit also leads to improved audit readiness. So, with consistent control implementation and reusable evidence, these audits become more predictable and less disruptive. Also, it strengthens trust with clients, and then in turn with regulators also, showcasing maturity, then transparency, and overall control on your environment. There is also a clear case for cost optimization, as unified audits reduce redundancy across teams, then your tools and documentation efforts.
All right, Sachin. So let's talk scale for a moment here, right? When you're managing 200 plus controls across, let's say, 10 plus standards, I mean, logically, the effort is massive, right? But does this burden differ between large enterprises and mid market players? I mean, do the smaller and mid market firms experience different kinds of compliance fatigue? Or would you say not really? It's just a matter of scale.
So I think answer is yes, Aparna. So the burden differs, yeah. So that is the truth, yeah. But then compliance fatigue is universal, yeah. So it just looks different for different organization. So largely, I mean, the big enterprises uh, face complexity because of certain things, yeah. So maybe I'll try to explain, yeah. So they will be talking about many controls. So if we combine multiple standards, then the 200 plus controls they have to take care of. Then different frameworks, yeah. Then global teams because they are spread across multiple
Hmm.
regions, and then parallel audits. So their challenge is coordination and duplication of efforts. Whereas your mid-market or let us say smaller firms, they often lack these dedicated compliance teams, and then they will not have standardized processes also. Also, they will not have the great tools. Yeah, so their fatigue comes from resource constraints and lack of clarity on what is required. So I think it is not just about scale. Yeah, it is about maturity, clarity, and capability.
So, Sachin, you've pointed out that the real challenge isn't just scale, it's like you said, maturity, it's clarity, and it's capability, right? Now, one area where that maturity really gets tested, I think, is legacy infrastructure, right? So, how do older systems or hybrid networks and even specialized hardware systems actually complicate the move towards the whole concept of unified, real time, cloud centric compliance models?
Um, Yeah, I think Aparna, this legacy infra is the biggest problem. Yeah, so I feel it definitely presents a major hurdle in this journey towards unified or let us say cloud aligned compliance. So these systems, whether it is maybe outdated OS or maybe on-prem hardware or hybrid network environments. So these things often lack the telemetry, then automation, and integration needed to support this real-time compliance monitoring. Also, this legacy infra doesn't generate logs in modern formats, so it can't easily integrate with SIMs or compliance tools, and often, I mean, it requires manual checks from a control validation perspective. So this creates visibility gaps and then makes evidence collection inconsistent, and also it disrupts any efforts to centralize and automate audit processes. Moreover, these many legacy systems support mission critical applications, or I mean, it is for maybe regulatory requirements. That means these organizations can't just replace them overnight. Yeah. Now, in hybrid environments where cloud and legacy systems coexist, maintaining this control consistency and audit traceability becomes even more complex. So we can address this by tailoring unified audit strategies that accommodate both worlds. Yeah. So integrating cloud native
Hmm.
controls while building mechanisms like compensating controls or manual evidence workflows, and maybe phase modernization plans for these legacy systems. So I think these things will help. Yeah. Now, in the end, our goal is to ensure progress without compromising security or compliance continuity.
So let's talk about training for a little bit, right? We're seeing more and more regulators now mandate security awareness training. But obviously, you and I know that simple PowerPoint slides do not really drive behavioral change that is actually required. But why do you think this is becoming such a regulatory priority? And what does meaningful awareness outside of, simple PPTs actually look like?
So absolutely, Aparna. So like you said, we know that PowerPoint slides do not drive behavioral change. So having said that, regulators around the world, so from ISO 27K to PCI DSS, GDPR, or even sectoral authorities like RBI or MAS, they're emphasizing security awareness more than ever. Yeah, and it is for good reason. Yeah, so most breaches today don't start with a firewall failure, but they start with a human lapse. So whether it is a phishing email or weak password or maybe accidental data exposure, the human layer is often the weakest link. So, so that's why awareness has become a regulatory priority, and it is not just a checkbox. Yeah. So, as a critical, so it acts as a critical line of a defense. Yeah. So, this traditional awareness methods like static PowerPoint slides or maybe annual quizzes will not work at all. Yeah. So, meaningful awareness is all about driving behavioral change, and that requires engaging, yeah, then context driven methods. That is, you have to think about phishing simulations or role based training, and real life case studies. There could be micro learning modules also that are very very short, because I mean, this is different era altogether. Yeah, people believe in reels, so we have to create those short and I mean relevant
Yeah.
things. Yeah, so we can often integrate awareness into an organization's culture from exec briefings. Yeah, also We can have incident post-mortems, ensuring that security is not just understood but practiced on daily basis. So when awareness moves beyond policy into habit, that's when it becomes effective, and that's what regulators are ultimately asking for.
But uh, like you're saying, even if you get people switched on and security aware, I think there's still the reality that teams are stretched thin, and that's the reality of this industry, right? Compliance is getting more complex. The cybersecurity workforce is proportionately not growing in size. So, how do you see that playing out on the ground? And do you think automation or smart tools can actually help here by taking the pressure off?
So I feel uh, that gap is very real. Yeah. So compliance complexity is rising, uh, but the cybersecurity workforce is not scaling fast enough to keep up with that pace. Yeah, so teams on the ground are often overwhelmed managing multiple frameworks, evidence request, and then risk assessment with limited resources. This leads to burnout, delays, and then probably missed gaps. And ironically, it increases risk even though compliance is being pursued. So this is where automation and intelligent tooling can make a huge difference, but only when it is done right. Yeah. So tools that help with control mapping or evidence collection, alerting, and let us say having audit workflows can offload repetitive tasks and free up your skilled professionals for higher value risk decisions. So I've seen platforms that significantly reduce manual workload by offering evidence reusability and framework alignment, yeah, which is helping teams to stay compliant without burning out. So automation is not going to replace people. Yeah, you have to understand this piece, and everybody understand now. Yeah, so it will augment them. So it will enable teams to do more with less, and uh, the focus will be on strategy over checklists. So that's the balance we need in today's complex environment.
Yeah, Sachin, so you've made the case for automation as a way to take, the grunt work off people's plates so that they can focus on more strategic level work, which brings me to the tools themselves, right? We spoke about automation earlier. So, do you think the future belongs to best of the breed tools, or do you see integrated platforms that can unify security posture, unify regulatory readiness, and even threat intelligence? So, all of that in one single view. Do you see that as the way forward?
So we are now only. I mean, I can see that we are witnessing this convergence. Yeah, where your compliance, security, and risk management. So these things are no longer treated as separate silos, and that's a positive shift. Yeah. So in this new landscape, I believe the future leans strongly towards integrated platforms. Yeah. So I mean, these platforms can bring together security posture, regulatory readiness, and threat intelligence in a single contextual view. So fragmented tools may excel individually, but they often lack the connectivity as well as correlation needed to make these timely and risk informed decisions. So having said that, so best of breed tools still have a place, especially in specialized domains like let us say vulnerability scanning or DLP. But unless they integrate seamlessly into a broader governance framework, they become part of the problem. So I would advocate for platforms that support evidence mapping real-time evidence collection, then continuous risk scoring, and compliance automation. Yeah. So the real value lies not just in visibility, but in contextual intelligence, knowing knowing which threat impacts which control and how that affects compliance.
Yeah. So, Sachin, you spoke about and you've literally painted a picture of compliance, security, and risk, all of these coming together, sort of, right? In a more connected, in a more intelligent, single pane view. Now, from all the transformation programs that you've led in highly regulated sectors like BFSI, digital payments, etc., what do you think is the one big misconception rather, about compliance that you wish most people would drop?
Yeah, so very good question. And then now I can confidently say after, seeing so many audits. Yeah, so one major misconception is compliance is just a checkbox activity or a one-time project. Yeah, but that's again, that's not the reality. You know that. So it is an ongoing strategic enabler of trust and business resilience. So that is something people have to understand. Yeah. So it is not just about passing an audit, but it is about embedding security and privacy into the DNA of the organization. So true compliance drives operational maturity, customer confidence, and long-term growth. So when compliance is approached strategically, not just as a checkbox, then it leads to stronger cyber hygiene, and then better data governance as well, along with higher operational resilience. So, what does this mean in practice? Basically, it is embedding security controls into business processes and then using automation for real time visibility. And finally, using audit findings as opportunities for continuous improvement and not just from remediation perspective.
Right. So, largely what you're saying is that doing it right is to shift from once a year project to something that's like an always on exercise, right? But to get there, how do you think leaders need to strike the balance between building their own muscle, which is to say, building their own capability in house, and actually knowing when to bring in outside experts?
Yeah, so I think easiest answer to that could be, for leaders to think long term. Yeah, so goal should be to build internal capability that is sustainable, scalable, and risk aware. Yeah, we don't have to be just audit ready. Yeah, so this means developing teams that understand your environment, your risks, and the nuances of various compliance requirements. But the next question logically will be, yeah, so if that means that there is no need for external expertise,
Hmm.
so I think the answer is no. Yeah, so external expertise still plays a critical role, especially when it comes to interpretation of evolving regulations, and then when you have to do benchmarking and then independent validation. So the right balance is not binary. Internal teams should own the controls and accountability, while external experts should guide, challenge, and support internal teams. Yeah. So ultimately, compliance maturity comes from embedding it into business processes, and that requires both strong internal culture and the right external partnership, and then that will uh, keep us ahead of the curve.
Right. So, Sachin, let me just shift to you on a more personal note, right? What's the one hard lesson you've learned while helping clients deal with complex audits or failed compliance efforts?
Aparna, one hard lesson which I've learned is this documentation and ownership piece, and that's everything. Yeah. So no matter how strong your technical controls are, yeah, if your responsibilities are not clearly defined and evidence is not maintained properly, even mature setups can fail during audits. So I've supported client through recoveries where lack of internal coordination and misplaced accountability turn minor gaps into major observations. So it taught me that compliance is not a one-time effort, but it is an ongoing discipline. Yeah, that demands clarity, consistency, and most importantly, collaboration across all functions.
So let's wrap this up with a practical takeaway, right? For organizations just starting out on their unified audit journey, what's the one quick win or priority action that they can take that you think is going to move the needle, or that you think is going to really make a difference, right? And while you're answering that, I'd just like to throw in another question into the arena, which is to say, what is that one single metric that every CISO should be watching or monitoring to know if compliance is truly improving security?
So I think uh, Aparna, so a starting point for the organizations could be uh, to start with gap assessment against a common baseline framework. So something like ISO 27K, or we can use another base which is let us say NIST cybersecurity framework. Yeah. So uh, these standards, yeah, can quickly highlight, yeah, overlaps across different standards, and it will help us in identifying redundant controls or missing safeguards. So from there, mapping existing controls to multiple frameworks like, let us say, ISO, SOC 2, or GDPR. Yeah. So it can deliver quick wins by reducing duplication of efforts. Now, even something as simple as centralizing policy documentation or using a single risk register can create immediate clarity, and then it will bring efficiency, and it will build momentum also. Yeah. So I often say that, yeah, so you have to start small, standardize early, and then build with scalability in mind. To the other point you asked, the one metric that every CISO should track, I feel, so of course, there are many metric, but then I feel that this control effectiveness score uh, could be a measure of how well implemented controls are actually mitigating risks in the real world conditions. So it goes beyond just checking if controls exist. Yeah, it actually evaluates whether they are consistently applied, monitored, and delivering the intended security outcome. Now, when you map it over time, this metric will give clear insight into whether compliance efforts are translating into improved security posture or not. Yeah. So it's far more than just audit pass rates or policy counts.
Okay, with that, Sachin, I think we come to the closure of this episode. So, thank you so much for kicking off our very first episode and giving our listeners and all the people who will tune in so much food for thought. I think we've gone from checklists to culture to controls to clarity to global harmonization and a lot more. And I think everyone who will listen in will walk away seeing compliance in a whole new light. Or it just, like I said, it's just so much food for thought. So thank you for that. It's been a great conversation with you. And I hope you enjoyed having this discussion with me too. We'll look forward to having you back for more conversations like this.